I want to talk about chicken breast. Great source of protein, low in fat, we all know that. But there's a certain segment of the population that doesn't want to eat it. Or if they do, they douse it in sauce or something just to make it palatable. I'm here to say, I don't think it's the chicken breast that they really don't like. I think it's the fact that it's overcooked they don't like. And we have the ability to solve that. So we're gonna talk about that today. One, I wanna start with why it's so hard to cook chicken breast. It comes down to three things. One, it's very low in fat, like we started with. It's 1 to 3% fat, so it's not forgiving when you're trying to cook it. Two, it's got a funny shape. It doesn't have a flat surface that makes it easy to cook. And then on top of it, it's thick, and then it's like, it tapers down, right? So there's different thicknesses to it. That presents a real challenge to cooking it evenly, particularly because you cook from the outside to the inside, and if it's different thicknesses, that makes it really hard. So we've been living in a world where most of the time we eat overcooked chicken breast, but sous vide solves all of those problems. It comes down to precision. It's made to cook everything precisely all the way through to one temperature. No matter how thick it is, no matter what the shape it is, doesn't matter. That's what makes sous vide chicken breast so good. Now, I have a fond place in my heart for sous vide chicken breast. But I want to invite someone who's a little easier on the eyes to tell that story. Jen? This is my lovely wife, Jen.
Hello.
So I was actually just telling him about how we got into sous vide cooking.
Yes.
Do you care to share?
I would love to share the story. It all starts with me being a terrible cook.
You could improve, yes.
And also being the primary dinner maker in our family. And I would make a meal, usually chicken, and I would give it to Rishi, and he would cut into it, and he would promptly say, please stop eating this. I'm going to take these and I'm going to finish cooking these because they are completely raw. Or they would be so overburnt and dry and terrible that I don't know how you even ate them.
Well, you were trying to compensate because what happened before.
There was many raw chickens I served.
And this is all early on in our marriage, and then we found a solution.
We did. One day he came home with a sous vide machine and he said, I'm gonna teach you how to use this machine so you no longer try to kill me.
Or go to the hospital.
Hospital.
So, fair to say, it may have saved our marriage.
Probably saved our marriage. Probably saved your life.
Or yours.
Probably saved many trips to the emergency room after consuming raw meat.
Well, would you cook your chicken any other way today?
Absolutely not. In fact, if a recipe calls for me to cook chicken in a way that I cannot sous vide it, he has to do it because the chances of me serving more raw meat is very high. Very high.
Yeah, and chicken breasts become a staple in our diet.
They're a staple. Yeah. And they're actually pretty good.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Jen is not alone. It is really hard to cook chicken for those reasons we mentioned earlier, but sous vide makes it easy. Get it right every time. So today, we're gonna harness the power of the sous vide to make chicken breast. And if you already are an experienced sous vide user, stay tuned, because we're not just gonna do a plain old video on cooking chicken breast. It's gonna be a little bit of an experiment because there's a lot of debate in the sous vide community about what the right temperature is for that chicken. So we're gonna try 3 different temperatures. And then we're gonna demonstrate what's the best outcome, which is gonna be different for everyone. But I'm hoping to show you what the differences are so you can make the choice for yourself. I myself cooked chicken breasts at 2 different temperatures depending on what I'm gonna use it for. We'll dive into that as well. But with that, let's get into a bit of cooking. So I'm gonna save you from the boring part of bagging the chicken. So I've got 3 sets of chicken, 3 sets of chicken breasts. And all 3, I will show you, are where you have sort of a larger breast and a little bit of a smaller breast, but they're all sort of consistent in size, where there's one larger one a little bit smaller. You can see them all here. And this is what we're gonna cook. So the 3 temperatures, without further ado, that we're gonna try are 142, 150, and 160. Now, if you're sitting there going, wait, I thought chicken was always supposed to be cooked to 165, take a breath. We're good. So that is a function of killing off all the bacteria or salmonella or what have you within the meat that might be present. And it's not just a function of temperature, it's a function of temperature and time. So with sous vide, because we are cooking all the way through for a duration of time, it's not a worry. And if you don't believe me, I'll put up the chart for you to see, and you have no worries that we're cooking at less than 165. We can pasteurize this chicken, so you can actually cook it and leave it in your fridge for a week or more. You just have to be careful not to open the bag. If you have a vacuum sealer, all the better. It will extend the life even longer. But we're getting to an aside. That's all for meal prep, which would be for perhaps another day. But just know you're gonna eat perfectly safe meat, and that's not an issue. Second, if plastic bags are an issue for you, I understand. Don't worry about it. You can use silicone bags. We have stasher bags. I don't have them right here, but we have stasher bags that we use as well. That's a perfectly safe option. It gets you past any phobia or concern you might have around cooking chicken or meat in plastic, because I get it. There is a reason to be concerned around some of that stuff. All the research we have today says this is safe. I will advise you to use freezer grade bags for a couple reasons, and part of that is what the temperature that plastic can withstand, such that you don't have microparticles, nanoparticles, things of that nature, and the fact that they double seal. So you have options. It doesn't have to be a plastic bag. What you want is that beautiful, juicy chicken breast that quite possibly is one of the greatest foods there is out there. Lean, hopefully tasty. If you can make it that way, it will be with sous vide, and just should be a staple of your diet, really. So again, we're gonna keep things simple today. I will give you one tip. So when you're cooking your chicken breast, or when you're when you're bagging your chicken breast, we all know, like we talked about, a little bit of salmonella, blah, blah, blah. Real concern. So when you're bagging things for sous vide, what you wanna do is to fold over the bag and then insert. That way, if you're hitting the edge, which you inevitably will, this is kind of like a game of operation where you're gonna touch the sides, you are not contaminating the outside of the bag, which just keeps everything nice and clean and worry-free of contamination. Now, let's jump into how I am gonna season these today. The beauty of chicken breast, again, it's so versatile, doesn't have a lot of flavor on its own, so you can use all sorts of rubs, marinades, spice mixes that you want to use to your liking to have that perfect chicken breast. The other thing you should know about sous vide is it does take on the flavoring a little more profoundly than other forms of cooking, because you are ultimately cooking it in that bag, pressed up against the meat or the chicken for a duration of time, and it's sort of just self-marinating off the liquid that expels from the chicken, blended with the spices. It all sort of comes together, and you're kind of like hyper marinating it, if you will. So be aware of that. But with chicken breast, we don't have to really worry, because there's not a lot of flavor to begin with. So don't be shy on the spices when you're doing chicken breast. Today, what we're gonna use is some butt rub. I really like this stuff. It's just, I like to smoke things, and this is one of my staples for smoking meat. So I'm gonna apply it to the chicken breast today. It's a great flavor. It's mostly the primary stuff is salt, pepper, garlic, your main things. And then it's got some, what do we got here? We've got some onion, some paprika, chipotle powder. If you haven't tried it, I'd recommend it. Real simply, I like to do it like, you can, of course, put these out on a plate and then just sprinkle on. I like to keep life a little simpler, particularly when I'm just using a rub, and I'll just pour it right in. Again, you can be generous with it, not an issue. And then I'll close it. Ooh, that smells good. It's potent too. It smells good. And it's potent. So, I'm gonna close it and just simply shake around to mix it all up. I'm sure you guys have practiced this with marinades and what have you. So, real easy way just to get it all covered up, and bam. Nice coverage all the way around. So now we're at the phase where I could have done this before. We're gonna start 3 sous vide vats. Again, one at 142, one at 150, and one at 160. We'll run them for 2 hours. So let me back up. Like we said, a lot of people prefer different temperatures. So we've established that. Now, time duration is another factor. Here's a simple rule of thumb. I think you don't want to go any less than 90 minutes, no matter how small your chicken breast is. I don't want you to go, I would advise against going over 4 hours because it can tend to get mushy after that. The proteins start to break down. But the good rule of thumb here is call it an hour per inch of thickness that your chicken breast is. Keep a floor of 90 minutes just to be safe, and keep a cap of 4 hours. Now, if you're cooking something, so what does that really mean practically? If you're cooking something like those really big Costco chicken breasts, they've gotten really big, do it for 3 hours instead of 2 hours. I think you'll be happier with that. So we're gonna start the 3 bats. Again, we'll do 142, 150, and 160, and we'll look at the results. So we have our setup ready. So we've got 3 tubs. We're gonna do 142, 150, 160. I won't let you forget that. A couple things to mention about the setup. You do wanna try and use a trivet whenever possible. These are by ThermoWorks, they're fantastic. You also don't need one on this ANY container because it's got a built-in trivet. So a little point there, which is really nice. And then I've got a video on sous vide containers. I'll link it if you're curious about what might be right for you. You can always use a pot. That's not an issue at all. At some point it becomes a little nicer to use something that you can see through and what have you. So now we've got our chicken breast. One note, so we're just gonna be using regular plastic bags. Like I mentioned before, you can use stasher bags if you prefer. Not an issue at all. The other thing you can do is use a vacuum sealer, which I often do. What you want to make sure, we're going to be doing the sort of the immersion method here, or the water displacement method, if you will, to rid all that air out of the bag. Again, I've got a video on that. I'll link it below. But when you're cooking these chicken breasts, simply with sous vide, you want to try and make sure there's space between the breasts. If you have a single breast in a bag, obviously non-issue. But what you will notice is if they're touching each other, they're sort of meld together. Not a big deal. What you don't want them is to fully overlap because that will increase the cooking time. You just want them to be to get as much water circulation as you can around them with enough spacing. The vacuum sealer makes that really easy to do. We're just going to use a bag today because it's a little more practical. So in terms of water displacement method, all you got to do is dunk the bag and zip and have the corner sticking out. So you're fully immersing it except for that corner, and then sort of dunking as you immerse it. And then you have an air-free bag. Beautiful, really easy. So we've got our machines going. One thing I do want to note for you guys is it's really helpful to have a cover of some sort on these machines. So the ANY here comes with this cover. This will help us get to temperature much more quickly than we otherwise would. The other two machines that I have right here don't have covers. My solution is I like to use sous vide balls that help with evaporation and just keeping the heat in. I find them really easy to use, and like you can see, I have one bag that I can use across multiple containers, but you can use something as simple as like aluminum foil or something of that nature, just to help retain some of that heat and get to your temperature more quickly. So that was the last of the machines to get to their target temp. Again, 142, 150, 160. So let's drop in the chicken and cook it for 2 hours and see how it comes out. You just want to make sure that your chicken is fully immersed. This one perfectly is. This ANOVA has a nice rack on top that makes it very easy to do, to ensure that. Then this one will be a little more straightforward. You can see I've got a little less water on the 142. I'm just taking simple clothespins on these and attaching them to the side just in case. That way I keep the end of the bag out of the water, yet I'm still fully immersed. And I don't have to worry about, for some reason, if that seal fails, which doesn't happen often with these freezer grade bags, but you never know, just to be safe. Again, I'm ensuring I'm fully underwater, which is indeed the case. And then finally, we'll do. So you can see my water level is a little lower on this one, so I'm going to use magnets because it'll just be easier to do. These are silicone magnets that are really nice to just hold that bag underwater, and there we go. So we'll cook for 2 hours, see how it comes out, compare them all. Well, all right, we're at 2 hours now. Moment of truth. Let's take them out. See what happens. I'm just gonna take the bags out. I'll let them rest for about 2 minutes, just so they're a little easier to handle. And then we'll get to the good stuff. You can see the liquid in the bag. We'll measure it. See what happens. All right, so let's take them out of the bag, see how they look, give them a taste, and give them a smell. It smells delicious. Honestly, I can't wait to cut into this thing. So here's breast one. Again, this is the 142. It smells so good. And then you can see the amount of liquid there. Now I'm thinking that's going to be less liquid than the other two, but we'll see. Let's pull out the one. Here, I'm going to make a little room. Oh, look, I got 2 pairs of tongs. What do you know? So this is the 150. Beautiful, smells so good. Some liquid there. And then the 160. Which I can already tell has a lot more liquid than the other two. Let's see there. All right, so let's actually, maybe first things we do is actually measure the liquid, because it's part of our little test in our experiment here. So this is the 140. You get about 2 ounces of liquid there. Not sure if you can see that in the camera, but you got about 2 ounces there. It's a little difficult to see, but 2 ounces. Pour the 150. And that's about 2.5 ounces there. Yep, maybe a little more than that. So again, do my best to show you, but that's 2.5 ounces, a little more than 2.5 ounces. And then finally, we'll look at the 160 and see how much liquid that produced. But I can tell you already, it's gonna be well in excess of 3. Ooh, too much to even hold in this. And this is so that's gonna be well over a 1/4 cup for sure. It's difficult to read. Ah, too much liquid, got everywhere. But that's probably 6 ounces if I had to guess. So well north of the 2 ounces or so we had in the 142, the 2 and let's call it 5/8 or so that we had in the 150, and then a lot more in the 160. But now let's cut it and get into it and eat. Give me a second to clean a little bit. All right, so what I should have mentioned before too was, if you planned on holding on to this and keeping it in your fridge for a couple weeks, don't open the bag. Just throw it straight into your refrigerator or put it in an ice bath if you don't want to affect the temperature of your fridge. Probably a good idea. And then put it in the fridge. It'll stay good for at least a week. If you're using a vacuum sealer, 2 weeks. Like, it's a really good trick with sous vide to be able to meal prep in that way. Fantastic. Now, let's get into it. Can't wait. Need a fork. All right, so here we have the 142 that I'm gonna cut into. Oh, it's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Take a bite, can't wait. Oh, it's so, excuse me, that's so juicy. It's so good. I'll try and give you a close look there. It is just moist. It's got a little more, you don't taste the fibers, it's just smooth and juicy and just a different experience at 142. This is actually what I like to cook when I know I'm gonna cook the chicken for salads. This is my preference. I will do it at 142. I won't bother searing it. We didn't talk about searing. If you'd like to sear it, you certainly can. You're not gonna get a ton of reaction from a taste perspective to it, but from a presentation perspective, it's gonna be very nice. Look much more like traditional chicken. Here, when you simply sous vide it, you can get looks that are less appealing than what you would normally eat chicken at. Searing certainly helps with that, know that. But at 142, it's a delicious piece of meat, so juicy, how I prefer it on my salads. It's so good. Then we're gonna get into the 150. Let me just make sure you can see that all right. So at 150, you can tell right away, it falls apart a little more. It's a little more fibrous. So it's got a different texture to it. This is gonna be a little more like your traditional texture, excuse me, for chicken, but hopefully you can see, oops. Hopefully you can see that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. and also tasty. So good. 150 is how I prefer my chicken when I know it's gonna be the main event. That's where I like to cook it. It's a little more what you'll be used to. Very juicy, very flavorful. The fibers have worked and broken down a little more. It's a little more traditional, but I recommend trying that 142. I recommend trying the 150. 150 again, it's what I prefer as my go-to default sort of taste. And then we have the 160, so let's cut into that. And you can tell right away, there's less juice in this. There's a little more resistance to the knife, but let me let you get a look at that. 160, and just still, again, excuse me, still very juicy, but you get to taste a little more texture and like the fiberiness of the chicken, stringiness, if you will, a little more as you progress with that chew, but still very good. Now, if you're thinking about 155 or 150 or 160, the magic number with regard to when sort of the chicken breast extracts moisture is 155. So I would recommend not going higher than 155. You saw how much liquid came out of the 160. 155 is a little bit of the tipping point where you get a lot of moisture out of it. So start at 150. If you prefer it done a little more, I would go to 155. If you need to do more, by all means, do more. And then, like I said, I prefer 142 on the lower end. But I hope you found this video informative. I am certainly going to enjoy this chicken now, and thanks for coming along for the ride.